You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
You just got to go out and express yourself.
Fonte with a scooping header.
You just got to get the job done. I'm here to get the job done.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Teller. Onside, 1-0. Blue fast shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. Now, the World Cup is well underway, and I'm recording this just moments after Cedric and his teammates found a way to get through to the round of 16, where they will face Uruguay on Saturday. Not the most technically gifted or entertaining match, maybe, but still plenty of tackles, plenty of things going on, plenty of passion being shown all around the pitch. It was definitely enjoyable in that regard, even if the maybe quality of the football wasn't everything we would have hoped it would be. But as a neutral, I'm just really enjoying the majority of the matches. I didn't watch the Spain game, but I did see that they drew, which means that Cedric and Portugal then finished second in the group. They'll move on, and we'll see how it goes from there. Jan Bednarak, of course, is eliminated. Poland is eliminated. Yoshida still has a chance, and we'll have to see kind of what happens from there. So we'll keep that in mind. But the focus of this right now is not necessarily the World Cup. It is on a few other things. And this week we are joined by Mark Sanderson. Mark Sanderson, you may remember him, and you should remember him, hopefully, as the author of the Bobby Stokes book, The Man from Portsmouth Who Scored Southampton's Most Famous Goal. Mark is an author. He is a storyteller. He does lots and lots of good things, and you will have seen him around Twitter. He's on Twitter @_Mark Sanderson. And we had him on way back on episode 10 to talk about the book. But this week we're back with something a little bit different. And I am a big fan of podcasts. If you listen to this show, you know that already. So Mark recently started his own podcast, and it's more of a kind of a narrative podcast. It's not necessarily like an interview like this show is. It's something a little bit different. So I heard the first episode. I got really excited, reached out, and we had a chat about the podcast, about where the idea came from, why he chose it. We talk about the World Cup. We'll talk about Tadic possibly leaving and things like that as well, just simply because that's kind of where the conversation went. So our conversation is quite lengthy, so I don't want to take a bunch of time here, but I do want to thank you for listening. I hope that you are enjoying the World Cup. I hope you enjoyed England's victory on Sunday. And I for the most part, I'm enjoying the majority of the games, even if the VAR gets in the way just a little bit. So like I said, we will talk to Mark Sanderson about all of that, about his podcast and about everything else. But before we do that, we're going to be joined by Stephen Brandt, who runs the Yellow Card podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about Stuart Armstrong, the incoming signing. It sounds like Saints are going to have, relatively soon. And Stephen is a podcaster. He runs, like I said, the Yellow Card podcast. He writes for a number of places, and he is a Celtic fan and a Liverpool fan. So he's on both sides of kind of the Southampton transfer conveyor belt, for better or worse. So we'll talk to him a little bit about Stuart Armstrong, what we can expect from the man coming over from Celtic. So let's go ahead and jump into that now. So here's my conversation with Stephen about Stuart Armstrong. We'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Stephen Brandt. You can find him on Twitter @StephenC. and he also runs the Yellow Card Podcast. That is @YellowCardPod. I've been a guest on there before. So, Stephen, thanks for joining me today to talk a little bit about Stuart Armstrong. As a Celtic fan, we'll get your kind of view of him and kind of what he can bring to the team. So, before we do that, how are you?
Not bad. It's a really weird rainy Sunday morning here out on the East Coast. So you got me at a good time where I'm not either coaching, writing, reading, or running around like a madman. So it's good morning.
Yeah, all right. You gonna be watching some of the World Cup a little later on?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, and I know this is going to offend people. I try to miss the England ones because I just don't really care about the English FA whatsoever, and the let's fawn all over them. So, I mean, I'm trying to keep to like the lesser media because the problem I've had with this World Cup is that every pass or every goal is, well, they can do it, so everything about America is bad. It's really wrapping my mind, but I'm fortunate, unlike you, where I can do a non-club pod. I could go on for like a half hour after a guest and just lose my ever-loving mind about something, and it can.
Yeah. All right. Well, there is talk now. It looks like it's going to happen relatively soon that Stuart Armstrong's going to come over from Celtic. What can you like? What are we getting? What is Southampton getting in Stuart?
You're going to get a squad player. I mean, I'm looking at the transfer fee, and you know how transfer fees are now. About 90% of it is overblown anyway. I mean, I still can't believe that Neymar was $220 million to go to PSG. So I mean, you're basically getting him as a free transfer, more or less. I mean, you're going to get a decent player. Here's the problem that you're going to get with him, is that he's got outside interests, which are great. The problem is he's studying to be a lawyer. So you may have someone who's dialed in that wants to play, but is eventually looking for something better. He's not going to be your star player. He's not going to come down and be within 3 years. You won't get 45 to 75 million for him from another place. This is going to be about where he tops out. I mean, I think Southampton is a little bit above him, but not too much. That makes sense?
Yeah. Now, coming over from Celtic, we've obviously had some success with players coming over from there, with Fraser Forster, Victor Wanyama, Virgil van Dijk, and those players, except for Forster, moved on and had relatively good careers. Celtic does dominate that league for the most part. I don't want to fall into the narrative saying that they're the only team there necessarily, but Armstrong seemed to fall out of favor a little bit this season with injury and things like that. And if he's not making it into the Celtic team, on a weekly basis, do you think he's going to be able to handle the Premier League and be able to make an impact on the squad? Because I would look at our kind of central midfield and say, like, that's probably one of the strongest areas of the team if everybody hangs around.
Yeah, I mean, what are you looking at him as? Are you looking at him as a starter and a star, or are you looking at him as a squad filler?
Well, like you said, I would imagine he's going to be a squad player. We do have the aging Stephen Davis, who's been at the club for a long time, and he can play both almost in the number 10 in a 4-2-3-1. And when we play, I think he generally is deployed in that role when we have to be slightly more defensive when we're coming up against a team that's going to be kind of attacking us, and he has the ability to go forward, but not necessarily isn't super flashy. He's not Mesut Ozil. He's going to track back and play defense and all that stuff. I would imagine, and from talking to some other people, that's where I see Armstrong playing. Is he can go forward, but he will also kind of maybe, hopefully, play defense and can win the ball back and things like that. Is that kind of what he can do?
Yeah, I mean, you are getting another Davis in there. Now, he didn't really fall out of favor there. As I mentioned before, he's studying to be a lawyer. So, I mean, if you remember anything with when you were in school, it's hard to when you're going to something good to study, put your mind all to it. Now, I will back up and say, yes, Celtic is the only team in the SPL, but I am highly biased toward that. So you probably want a rational Celtic fan with this. He's going to take time to adapt. Obviously, coming to any different nation or league, you have to adapt. You're not going to see someone come from the continent into Southampton. You're not going to see someone from Real Madrid come to Southampton and suddenly light the world afire. The EPL is a different league. SPL is a different league. SPL is what the EPL was in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Very hard league, not much, some scoring, but more of what the sport should be. Armstrong's going to be a good wave type of player. He's going to be like what happened with Joe Ledley, the last one that came down and went. I think he's with Cardiff now. He's going to be around, going to be a good player, and that's about it.
All right. Looking at his stats from 2017, 2018, and then also the 2016, 2017 seasons, there's a huge, he scored a ton of goals in 2016, 2017, and only 3 goals this year. So is looking at his history, he doesn't score a ton. Is that 15 goals in the Scottish Premier League? Is that just an anomaly? We shouldn't expect that from him. We should expect 3, 4, 5 goals a season rather than 15.
Well, you're looking at Celtic is arranged differently. They don't need to score from their midfield to smack around Hamilton or Partick Thistle or any of that. They've got the young Moussa Dembele who could put up goals. You get Lee Griffiths, Scott Sinclair. You've got enough goal scoring where all you need someone like Stuart Armstrong is to provide the link between the defense and the offense. Yeah, it would be nice if you could get someone, but that's not how you guys are set up. You need him to get to the front. Now, he's probably going to start to be a cup guy at first to get to the league. You're probably going to get 4 to 5 goals because you're not going to get a bucket of a lot of stuff. Goals in the SPL are hard to come by because it's not that. It's an easy league, but it's a hard league to get stuff in.
All right. Well, overall, are you guys going to miss him? Is this going to be will he be replaced at Celtic relatively easily, you think?
Yeah, because here's the thing that people give Celtic a lot of trouble that they're the only team up there. It's because they actually have a good youth system and can bring players through, and they're recruiting from all continents. Lennoxtown has a lot of great players coming through, and Celtic's been doing this since the 50s, so they will find someone. There's that Henderson kid that's young. They have the defender Tierney, you guys actually should have gone and gotten him because he's going to be Virgil van Dijk but better at this point. Brendan Rodgers, who I don't rate as anything in any league, will find someone. We'll find someone. We'll transfer someone in. Celtic just transferred someone in from PSG, so they've got the contacts to find someone good, someone young, to grow to go somewhere else.
All right. Well, I guess that's good for you guys, for Celtic, and hopefully it works out for us, and we can, hopefully I think Armstrong is an improvement over some of the players we have, some of the squad players we have, and hopefully we can, move forward and he'll grow into his role there, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But yeah, and hopefully, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's hopefully or not. But at some point, it seems like they go from Celtic to us, and then we'll hand him back to Liverpool in a few years, which you also support. So we'll work on it for a while.
He's not Liverpool quality.
Thank you for filling me in on Armstrong and taking some time to share with us. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll have to see how he gets on this season. And yeah.
No problem, man.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right, cool. Thanks.
And special thanks again to Stephen Brandt for joining me. Once again, you can check out the Yellow Card podcast. The links are in the show notes, so do not hesitate to go over there and check it out. It's recorded live, usually shows up twice a week, Tuesday and Wednesday nights in the U.S. And it's a well-rounded kind of soccer show. They get lots and lots of writers on there to talk about current issues and other things outside of Saints. Obviously, it's not a team-specific show. So thanks to Stephen for doing that. And that's kind of what we can expect from a Celtic fan from Stuart Armstrong. So we'll have to see how he progresses, how he gets on. Hopefully the injuries and the other things that he has going on in his life don't kind of interfere with his performance here at Saints. So there we go. But now it's time to move on to talk to Mark Sanderson. Once again, we'll talk about his podcast, which is called Behind the Story. We'll talk about a little bit about his book just to give you a refresher. And we go through some other things as well. So I hope that you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you on the other side of the interview. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Mark Sanderson. You can find him on Twitter at _Mark Sanderson. And we're here to talk about his podcast. And last time you were on, Mark, we talked about your book, and it was way back. I looked it up. I think it's episodes 10 and 11. And now we're on episode, this is 76. So it's been a while. But we've talked a little bit here and there on Twitter since then. And welcome back to the show. And thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, is this episode 76?
It is.
Well, that's ironic, isn't it? Because, obviously us, the book being at Bobby Stokes, 1976. Here he goes again, plugging his book. It was meant to be, wasn't it?
It
was meant to be. We didn't stage that, by the way.
No.
It's been ad-libbed by me.
If I was smarter, I would have planned it, but I guess it works out. And I'm one not to believe. I don't tend to believe in coincidence, but maybe this is one of those.
I feel a bit strange now. Yeah,
it is. But some things have changed since we last talked. Obviously, different season, whole season has gone by. Maybe a little bit of a different feel, I guess. But you've also, you started to do your own podcast, which is something that I'm interested in, and hopefully I will not be too much of a nerd about the questions I ask, and they will apply to everybody because it is football related. But just first off, how are you? Are things well, or how are things going?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm glad last season's over. Enjoying the World Cup, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really worried that I wasn't going to enjoy the World Cup given that America is not in it, but it's actually it's freed me up just to watch the games and kind of, enjoy Croatia and enjoy, watch Tadic play and just kind of not have to worry about results and who we're going to face and if we're going to make it through or anything. I just get to watch. So it's kind of nice for me.
Yeah, it's a shame the US aren't there, but I can relate to that because I really enjoyed as a kid the 1994 World Cup, which England didn't get to, which is in the States. And I enjoyed the 2008 Euros as well, which England didn't make. It was kind of like a stress-free watching.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it's nice to watch your own team, but it's fun. I really look forward to watching all the others as much as anything else.
Fox, who has the coverage here, has really been pushing like the root for your roots. So root for where you came or where your parents are from or where, your family's from or whatever. And then when I'm not sure if that didn't catch on or whatever, but then we had one of our biggest stars, Landon Donovan, who is huge in terms of influence and stuff like that, come out last week, just before the Germany-Mexico game, with a sponsored post for Wells Fargo holding up a Mexico scarf saying like, we should support Mexico, and the outrage from
on Fox. I'm sure that went down very well. Yeah.
Well, no, it was on. I'm not even sure if Fox did anything, but Twitter was a mess. Like people were not happy, and because this is essentially like if you didn't make it, if England didn't make it, but Wales and Scotland were both there, and David Beckham's holding up a Wales or Scottish scarf saying like, oh, root for these guys. Now we're all going to get behind them, and it's like. Maybe not, and maybe that's not the correct comparison. Maybe it's maybe it would be something else.
I think that's okay. Yeah, people lose their minds. I mean, but I'm pretty relaxed. I just like to see the best players play.
Yeah, and a lot of my students, a lot of people around here where I live are supporting the Mexican national team, and if you. The U.S. has played a couple of big games against Mexico in Texas and in Southern California, and they've realized like that's a home game for Mexico. Essentially, you got to play Mexico in Columbus or in somewhere on the East Coast. You got to get away from the southern border, otherwise it's not really an advantage to the U.S. team. So that just is the way it is, and it's always fun when we play Mexico because all the kids at school will make sure and point out, the jersey that I'm wearing is not the one they're wearing, and they want to talk about it. So it's fun.
No, I bet. I mean, that was probably one of I'd say my favourite games so far, the Mexico game. In Germany. Yeah. Because they've played Germany, I haven't checked this, they've played Germany a lot over the last 20 years in the World Cup, and normally, give a good account of themselves and lose. Yeah. So I thought that was that kind of summed up this World Cup nicely. In the past, not always, but usually there's a team just peaking as the World Cup begins, and they're the ones everyone's hanging their hat on. But I don't think there is that team this tournament, which makes it more interesting.
Yeah, it seems like all the big teams are missing a piece, There are holes in everybody's team. It seems like even if there's a lot of depth there's just, whether it's the manager or a goal scorer or something, there's something not quite right. And so for me, it's just, like I said, it's just been entertaining as possible. I can't, I can't complain at all. It's been fantastic.
I wouldn't want to play Russia. That's all I'm saying.
No.
They've had a remarkable rise. No further comment on that, but they've had a remarkable, incredible 8 goals in 2 games.
We're not gonna look into that any further.
We're not gonna speculate.
It's all just
totally normal. They just turned it on for the tournament. Definitely nothing funny there.
But all right, so let's talk a little bit. I have some questions about the podcast, and the podcast is called Behind the Story. Is that correct?
It is. I'm a bit embarrassed because this is number 76 for you. I know all the other Saints podcasts, they do loads, and I just suddenly, I listen to so many podcasts, a bit like you. I'm sure we all do, don't you? On your way to work, whether you're driving or in the car, it's more of a thought. Maybe you're going for a run. You don't have to sit down and watch it. You can do it. You can listen to it more passively. And there's so much out there. I mean, it must be killing radio. And I just realised with the book, I got loads of tapes, interview tapes, and I said, if I was more on the ball, I could have turned them into little, maybe not hour-long podcasts, but 5-minute snapshots of interviews. Because it's something I really enjoyed doing with the book. Rather than writing a novel where you're, shut away by yourself, making things up. A lot of it was going out and meeting people and talking to them and getting them to open up. And even though I was doing so much of that, it's taken me quite a long time to realise I really enjoyed doing that. So I kind of thought, I've got a few Saints fans on Twitter, why not? I kind of miss doing that. But I don't really feel like I had a strong enough idea for another book at the moment. But it would be good just to talk to a few guys for 20 minutes or so about their memories, and obviously because they used to be pros, they're not so uptight about what they can talk about. You can't really talk to guys now about what's going on behind the scenes because it's also commercially sensitive or whatever. They can't say that, but the older guys they can kind of say what they want, and it's quite a lot of nice insights. I've only done the one. It was a lot of fun to put together, and I'm hoping I can do a few more. I don't think I'm going to be as prolific as you, Matt, and some of the other guys, but and maybe it won't always be about Saints, but I think for the moment it's going to be focusing on Saints. So I can't give anything away, but I've got a few people I'm leaning on at the moment to hopefully have a few more interviews. So
all right, watch
this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I when I saw it, I get we were talking beforehand. I get really excited because I want to know, and being a fan, who is, I'll still say, relatively new to being a fan of Saints. It's only been, I guess, now 4 or 5 years. And so when you bring in guys that played, kind of before the Premier League or even early in the Premier League era, it's still new, and it's still kind of, the connections going back are not, maybe they're not as clear for me as maybe somebody who's watched for, most of their life, where you kind of have this timeline of players and storylines and things like that. And for me, it's still patchy, even though I've read about it and everything else. And so to hear the story, to hear kind of the memories and stuff like that, it's enjoyable. And it's one of the things I really enjoyed about one of the other Saints podcasts, the Saints FC podcast, was they started with just doing those interviews, and just to hear those guys recount some of the tales of people they've played with and matches they played in and things like that. I found it to be really interesting. And when I had the chance to talk with Anthony Amy, that was maybe, it was the most stressed out I've ever been in terms of doing an interview. But it was also just really, really a pleasure to be able to kind of look back and have him clarify things when I had questions and misconceptions and stuff like that. So
you were stressed out, Matt? What were you stressed out about?
Just coming off like I didn't know what was going on, you know. I was afraid of appearing to be, I don't know, found wanting for context and stuff like that. And you know, you're talking to somebody who, you know, in America, like, I don't know, I don't see, like, professional athletes are held up as this big kind of like almost untouchable thing. And so to have the opportunity to have somebody say, yeah, I'll give you an hour, or I'll give you 45 minutes. Like, I was like, I have to make the most of this. I can't ruin this. And that was it. It was just kind of fear of failure, which is a common thing in my life that I've been working on, but it's still there.
I think we can all relate to that, Matt.
Yeah.
Not in terms of you. I mean, personally. Yeah.
No, it's been one of those things where I spend all year, and this is we're off the script, but it's okay. I spend all my time trying to encourage kids to take chances and push themselves and put themselves out there and on all that stuff. And it's one of the things that the podcast has been a really good opportunity for me to work on that myself, because it's putting myself out there it's reaching out initially when I try to contact you and anybody else, it's just making that leap and being willing to be rejected and being willing to make mistakes and all that stuff. And it's been good for me in terms of, just being more accepting of making mistakes, I guess, and learning from them. So.
Good for you, mate.
Yeah. Anyway. So you mentioned that you weren't sure how often you'd be able to put together episodes, but I have like your show is different. You know, my show is, I call somebody, I talk to them, I edit it, I put it out that week. You're putting together a story. You had clips of things thrown in there. You had, some narrative stuff in there, and that's a whole different kind of genre of, I classify this more as an interview podcast, and yours is more of a kind of a narrative storytelling, almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with This American Life or any of the stuff a lot of the stuff that NPR does. It's much different than that. So I think you've picked a little bit of a harder road, but what kind of pushed you towards doing audio? I know you said you didn't quite have an idea for a book, but was there anything else about audio in general that really made you want to try it?
Well, I think with the book I wrote, because it was such a big story to tell. I felt with audio it gives you an opportunity to tell sort of smaller stories, smaller dispatches, because I listen to so many podcasts. I feel in many ways the podcasts all you guys do, I feel a bit of a fraud in comparison, because a lot of guys go, they're season ticket holders and they go, and for various reasons, family commitments. I don't, but I stay in touch with what's going on at the Saints via the radio and what have you. But I think why I just listen to so many. I'm not really a TV guy, I'm not really a Netflix guy. I've always loved the radio. In fact, that's really how I started with Saints, really, back in the late 80s when football wasn't on TV so much, It was kind of like, you're almost like, it's so weird looking back, like being a kid, being 10, because football hadn't really got the big kind of marketing drive it got after the 1990 World Cup, and then Sky picking up the rights to the Premier League. There had been a lot of disasters, the Heysel disaster in Hillsborough, in the UK and in Belgium. You're almost kind of like a leper, but you're a football fan, aren't you? It's kind of almost like an alternative thing. So for me, for Saints, my dad wasn't really a massive football fan, so he wasn't like taking me when I was really, really little. So it was just listening to the local radio. BBC Radio Solent would have the commentary, and as long as you got a transistor radio, you could listen. So I guess maybe the seeds were always there. The seeds have always been sown for audio, and I still love listening to football on the radio. I actually find Saints really stressful because I care. I care who wins. Obviously, Adam Blackmore and Dave Manson, I think they do I love what they do, but I find it quite stressful. I enjoy it when there's I think Tom Waits said that once. His favourite sound. He said, the sound of a ball game on the radio. I can relate to that. If BBC Radio 5 are doing a game on the radio, it could be anybody, not Saints. And that's a very relaxing thing to listen to. I don't know what it is. In fact, all sports on the radio. It's so counterintuitive, isn't it? Because you can't see what's going on. But I've always loved it. So I think it's just taken me a while to to get around it properly because, you know, in the past you'd have to have so much equipment, but now there's so many things that are free and easy to use on your phone that, you know, even 5-10 years ago it'd be impossible. So that's kind of a very long rambling answer to your question.
No, not at all. And you said, you know, for the most part it would be kind of, you know, Saints related in terms of the podcast and stuff like that. But your show aimed at Saints fans or just football fans in general, or who I guess is the target audience, or who might enjoy this?
Oh, well, do you know what? I'm going to really annoy you now, Matt, because my day job's PR and marketing, so everything's all about strategy and objectives and target audience and blah blah blah. I mean, it makes sense to stick it to football and Saints now because that's what I always tend to write about. But I think you could. Potentially anyone could be on there. Maybe it'll have a football angle. Because for me, what I personally like about podcasts, it's not necessarily the subject. If it's done well, it could be if someone does a good, what you described as this narrative thing, it could be about, I don't know, glue or horses or ornaments. If it's done well, it's interesting. But I think for the time being, don't worry, Saints fans. We're not going to do Matt Letizia talks about Pritt stick or his favourite ornament or Princess Diana commemorative plate. It makes sense to do about you know, old Saints guys, because right now the club, they do such a good job on, you know, social media, what's going on now. But you know, 90s and before that, a lot of the footage has kind of been lost through the cracks of time, and a lot of players. A lot of very good players, I think, aren't maybe as known as well as they should do. So there's loads of people I'd like to talk to and tell their story. So again, you know, a very long and rambling answer, but I think initially, yeah, Saints fans would hopefully get a kick out of it. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I enjoyed the first episode, and I listened to it twice because I wanted to make sure I kind of, you know.
Oh man, you really do have time on your hands, don't you?
No, I was going to say, like, I'm teaching summer school right now, and I have a 30-minute lunch hour or period, and it's enough time to leave my room, walk across the street, across the shopping center, across the street to the grocery store, buy a couple pieces of fruit, check out, and walk back. And it takes me like 28 minutes, and I have it down. I've done it for every year that I've taught summer school, and it was just enough time to get the episode in. And then I listened to it again. I started again, and then I finished it on the way to the car. And it's just because I wanted to make sure I kind of had it all, and I enjoyed it, like you said. And I listen for a lot of things when I listen to podcasts that are new, and I enjoyed it. But where can people find it if they are looking for it, and how would they find it, just in case they wanted to check it out?
Oh boy, now you've got me. Well, it's you can get it on SoundCloud. You can get it on all the places, iTunes, Google Play. Bloody blah. I can stick a link out, but
yeah, well, we'll put a link in the show notes and all that stuff.
It's very clever how that works, isn't it? It just sort of goes out to all these places.
Yeah, I remember sitting there and just manually putting it into a bunch of places before, and now they've made it a lot easier. Spotify's been great. It's a lot of people listen to Spotify already, so it's nice if you can get on there. If you're not on there already, if you can find a way to do that, that's a nice platform. You mentioned that you like podcasts. What are some of the podcasts that you listen to on a regular basis?
Well, I like to keep up to date with all the Saints ones. There's a lot going about now. Anything football related. But I like a lot of the US ones. You know, as someone who likes to write, I like I really like ESPN, you know, because they and Sports Illustrated, because they do the longer sports stories. I'm going to get a bit nerdy now. People like writers like Wright Thompson. You know, he might go off for 6 months and just, you know, like hound and stalk Tiger Woods and just write this amazing long form piece of writing, you know. And so a lot of those guys I love. And you must have heard of The Ringer, right, Matt?
Yeah.
They do. I mean, again, a lot of people in the UK probably won't know, but you got like, what's the guy called? Bill Simmons. He does one. So I like a lot of American sports one, probably because I've always liked American sports writing. It seems to be people over there are allowed to write longer, you know, for a big story. Whereas you don't really get so much of that in the UK. You get there's a magazine, there's a quarterly publication in the UK called The Blizzard, which is pretty cool, which kind of does that. But I've always preferred the stuff in the States.
Yeah, there are certain, I guess, positions in the States that allow you to write long form stuff, and they will, they pay them enough and they give them enough leeway and enough time, and they're part of big enough companies that they can do that. And then we also have the ones who are just churning out articles that would appear in the, the one that's a 3-letter word. It also kind of goes, we revolve around it in the universe and all this stuff, but I won't mention the name because it's garbage. But we have some of those too, so don't don't worry.
Yeah, I'm sure it goes on. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's down to cost, isn't it? These guys. Imagine if you had a job. What an amazing job it would be. Right, I've got to write, I don't know, 5, just not a story every day, 5 stories, 5 long stories. And these guys, they go off and maybe they'll follow, I don't know, Tom Brady, was he quarterback with the Patriots, or relating it to England, I don't know, Eden Hazard or whoever. And maybe some of these stories don't even see the light of day, but they still get paid in their expenses.
Right.
What an amazing life that would be.
Yeah. Well, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about it. Maybe I've painted myself into a bad picture, but this podcast, the one I do is a weekly thing. It's kind of one of those where it's going to come out and it's going to be, hopefully I've only ever done, I think, one interview that didn't make it out because it was just not good. But for the most part, they're all coming out, whereas
it's a lot of discipline to do that.
It is. If there's one thing my parents really instilled in me, it's like, you consistency, and then you got to do what you say you're going to do and whatever. But, it's, the storytelling aspect, the long form stuff, even though the podcast you did is it's not lengthy, it's, that's more of a long form thing. It's more of a narrative thing than what I'm doing. So take the time, do it right. And people will be happy when it's there. People will be looking for it. So, if that's any sort of encouragement, I guess that
is, Matt. Cheers, mate.
No problem. Talk a little bit about football. Have you been watching the World Cup? We mentioned a little bit, but you said you've been enjoying it.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I love the World Cup. Maybe some people when they get a bit older they get cynical, but I absolutely love it. If I was able to, I'd sit down and watch every game. If I don't catch the games, I sit down for the highlights and then wake up on the couch about 2 a.m. because I've fallen asleep. I think it's been a great World Cup. It's been a great World Cup already because normally you've got, not normally, but often you've got a team or two who are peaking as the World Cup comes along. But this time it seems like it's anyone's ball game, really.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a bit of a tournament of attrition. All I'm saying is I think the Spain and Portugal group are tied with the Russian group, so I wouldn't want to play Russia. Again, this is just completely scandalous what I'm going to say, but I was very, very surprised at their 2 results coming in, walloping Saudi Arabia. Their goalkeeper, he looked hopeless, Saudi Arabia, and then just pushing aside Egypt. I wouldn't want to play them in the second round because they've got all the momentum. So
yeah,
but I'm loving the World Cup. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable. As just being able just to watch and just enjoy and take it all in and being surprised at teams. And every once in a while you get a team I completely forgot that Mohamed El Neni plays for Arsenal, also plays for Egypt, and it's nice to see him out there. And then you kind of see, even though when you watch on TV, you're playing whatever team you're playing, and they say, oh, this is so and so, he plays for this nationality, but you kind of forget when it's not your team and you're not paying that close of attention. And then all of a sudden the Premier League player pops up that of something about, and you're like, oh, I can see how he plays, and just the difference in some of these teams. I was really surprised when I was watching, I think it was Iran or maybe Saudi Arabia. They can control the ball and pass it around, goalkeeper, center backs, midfielder, back and forth. They can swing the ball around like nobody's, just like anybody else in the Premier League or anywhere else. And there's a certain quality that all of these teams are at. And then you really see the difference when you come up against somebody like Spain or Russia has shown to be really good, or even Croatia yesterday. All these guys are really good. And then there's just some that are just so much better. I don't know. It's just, it's humbling to watch that, because we go out and play, not even Sunday league quality, and it's a huge kind of I don't know what it is, just to watch guys who are really, really that good and know that they're representing their country, and know that some of them have day jobs and they're just out there doing this, they have to take time off work or whatever it is. I think that's great.
Well, maybe you'll get a chance to watch your World Cup game, Matt, in 2026?
Yeah.
Because the States have got it with Mexico and Canada.
Yeah.
There's bound to be a few games in your neck of the woods, isn't there?
Yeah. I want to say two of the cities, the Bay Area and LA are on the map as potential cities, and I'm going to say this now and then I'll be shocked when it doesn't happen, but I think both of them will be used because the International Champions Cup that comes over, it's like the preseason tournament that some of the teams play in from all around the world.
Sure.
They use the Rose Bowl down in LA, they use the Coliseum down in LA, and then they use the Levi Stadium up in the Bay Area. And I have to imagine that those will be used again because they've been used every year. They have transportation in and out. They have all that stuff. They're set. They should be there. And they hold a lot of people. So it should be fine. And I have to imagine, I don't care if I have to go to, Costa Rica against, who cares? It doesn't matter. You got to go.
Yeah, amazing to go. I'm going to get a bit nerdy with you, mate. You mentioned the Rose Bowl. I'm pretty sure that was the ground they played the final in the World Cup final in '94, when it was in the US. And it kind of froze me, that ground, because all modern grounds are kind of like bowls or they've got a roof. But that, if I remember rightly from back then, it was like this stadium where, well, if it rains, you're going to get wet, basically.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, it's in LA, so it is in LA, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. But is that like a college football ground or something? That's not like an American football ground, is it?
No. So they use it. UCLA plays there. That's where the UCLA plays their games. So they use it for American football, but they use it for college, and it is kind of it's not steep at all. It's a very kind of big bowl. And it is, it's actually, you park on a golf course, in Pasadena, which it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And,
that's what I could never get my head around growing up, is about American sports. Cause obviously growing up supporting Saints with the Dell, which when the new seating requirements came in, we had 15,000 fans max in the highest top flight of English football. Whereas you've got a college American football game and they get 50,000 fans. I could never get my head around that.
Yeah.
How crazy, because how big college sports are in the States. It's very hard to understand for English people, I think, British people.
Until really recently, actually, the college sports had the biggest stadiums in the United States. You look at places like in, I think, Michigan, Ohio State. Those were kind of the biggest stadiums in the U.S. And now there's a stadium in Atlanta that holds just a ton of people. I think they had something like 78,000 fans for an MLS game. They set the attendance record. And Levi Stadium holds a ton, and the stadium in Dallas now is just massive. And so, yeah, college sports are huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's pretty great. And then USC plays at the Coliseum, which is also just giant. And I got to see Manchester City against Real Madrid last summer play there, and it was great. It was almost all Real Madrid fans. There were like 4 City fans, and I felt really bad because Manchester City TV came up to us and asked us, they went player by player, say, who would you put on your team? Let's fill out a team sheet if you could pick between these two and these two. And we just kept answering Real Madrid players, and I felt really bad. And I said, just and then City won 4-1, and then they went on to win, everything but the Champions League. So I got to see the Premier League winners and the Champions League winners play a match against each other. I guess I should feel fortunate.
Yeah, it really is a global game now, isn't it?
Yeah. Besides Russia, anything really surprised you about the World Cup?
Well, I think what surprised me most is because going into it, the whole political side with Russia and what they are, what they stand for, and maybe some of the questionable human rights issues. People think, oh man, this World Cup's going to be a bit of a downer, and there's going to be trouble. There's going to be a lot of hooliganism. I mean, touch wood, there's not been any, and the atmosphere. I mean, I'm not there, but everything seems very, very positive. So I'm just been pleasantly surprised by the general atmosphere. I know that FIFA are pretty good at just getting in, cleaning up. You hear like bad stories of before the South Africa World Cup. Any homeless people just getting shipped out before the World Cup, so all the streets look clean. Again, I've got nothing to base that on, but I'm sure I know they do a good job to make sure it runs smoothly. But I've just enjoyed the atmosphere, and also not just the atmosphere. I think that's brought on by the games. Normally, the opening games of the World Cup are quite cagey. Everyone's terrified of making a mistake, but it's been pretty open. Even last night, Argentina-Croatia, the first half, everyone looked like terrified of making a mistake, but it was still a real messy game. But it was open, so it's kind of been very refreshing in that respect.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we're recording on Friday afternoon UK time, morning my time, but this won't come out till Tuesday, so a lot will happen between now and then. I think England even have another game on Sunday. But the hate for Argentina yesterday coming from my timeline, my Twitter timeline, which is mostly English fans, obviously, because that's where Southampton is. But you guys don't like Argentina. I think I know why.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm probably not a good person to ask, because I'm probably a bit too much of a hippie type person, laid back. But I'll probably not be very popular for saying it. But growing up, I always quite liked a lot of the Argentinian players. People like in the 90s, like Redondo, who played for Real Madrid. He was an amazing player, and people like that. I think for them it's weird that Maradona goes to watch all the games. It's a bit like when you're doing something bad, if you were a Christian, Jesus Christ, turning up.
Yeah.
Because it puts such pressure on them. He seems to turn up everywhere, smoking cigars in the non-smoking section. But, anyone who watches a bit of world football knows they got to the World Cup final last time round, and Messi really dragged them to the final, but I think people know that they've been a bit of a mess. They lost to Copa Americas, didn't they, in that time? Yep. To Chile, and they've had a load of managers, and I was quite surprised. Mascherano, who's been a very good player, but still playing centre midfield. I don't know how old he is now, but he's, I think, probably too much mileage under the belt to be asked to play centre midfield. They just look a total mess. So I don't take any glory in anyone losing, really. But then sometimes you can watch a game and something will happen. The guy who scored the first goal last night for Croatia, frankly, he should have been sent off. I don't know. Right. I think any disappointment about the World Cup, I think VAR's an absolute shambles. Utter shambles. It just really gives referees more chance to show how incompetent they are. Because the guy who scored, that was a fantastic volley, by the way, he scored. I've got his name now. But he did one of those cowardly tackles where you turn your back and put your studs up on someone's shin.
Right.
It's a complete red card.
Yeah. The
guy who considered the penalty for Denmark, for me, that's not a penalty. How can that be a penalty in Harry Kane when the guy's not looking, the Tunisian guy's not looking at the ball, arms round? For me, VAR's a complete shambles.
Yeah.
And for me, what really bugs me is, hey, you've caught my rant here, but why not just give the benefit of the doubt to a striker? If the striker's half a yard offside, too bad. Just give the goal. Let football be a bit more free, a bit more ambiguous, rather than trying to give everything's 100% correct. Football's a bit like life. Sometimes things aren't fair. You just got to get on with it and deal with it.
Yeah.
I think VAR, I just can't stand it. Hate it to the bottom of my soul, really.
Yeah. It's I'm stuck between really wanting it to be correct, because there's been this whole thing with baseball. They started a long time ago now putting the strike zone on TV, and letter of the law, strike zone is from basically the bottom of the letters to the top of the knees, and the width of the plate, but every umpire is a little bit different, and so
yeah, that's part of it. American football is a totally different game to football as we know it. It's more sort of regimented and structured, but football's not like that. And I think this tournament has shown, all right, let's have another look. Oh, actually, it's a little bit more subjective than we thought. So I suppose there is a place for some replays, and you could argue it came into. Over the 2006 World Cup final, I'm pretty sure Zidane got sent off because he had a little sneaky look at the camera from the third official. Things like that you don't want to see happen, but
right.
I just think sometimes you have to accept in football there isn't 100% correct decision. There isn't.
Yeah. I think sometimes that what they should be watching for is those off the ball incidents that, you know, like the Zidane incident and like some of those things where you got a guy with a hand to the face and then, you know, he goes down.
It drives me nuts. But referees are saying we're going to watch it in the penalty area, and if you're not looking at the ball, you've got your arms around somebody. That's a penalty.
Right.
That's clear as day.
Yeah.
Whereas the guy for Denmark going up for a header, hitting him in the arm.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
That was harsh.
I thought that was complete nonsense.
So aside from that, you know, you mentioned there hasn't been a ton of hooliganism, which is something that I was really worried about and read about, and I think. You know, sometimes I worry, am I getting caught up in the kind of the media hype and the storm? Am I buying into it too much? But the Russian hooliganism is something that is fascinating to me because I don't like watching fights. I don't like any of this stuff, but just the mentality that kind of goes behind it. And all these reporters did a fantastic job of kind of getting into that mindset and that culture and really kind of, talking to the kids who are involved. It hasn't shown up, but you know, Gareth Southgate goes for a run in the forest and comes back with a dislocated shoulder. I don't know if he engaged in one of these forest brawls or not, but it seems to be a kind of an embarrassing way to get hurt. I want to ask you, you have a story about maybe the most kind of embarrassing way you've ever been hurt or injured or anything like that?
Oh, let's see now. Actually, there is one. It's not as bad as Gareth Southgate, but I was last year training for the Southampton 10K, and I was just going for a run around my way in the evening, very nice, and there was a couple ahead of me, so I had to sort of sprint past them. As I stepped off the curb, fell off and twisted my ankle pretty bad. I mean, God knows what they must have thought, because I did the old thing where I think the Swedish call it fartlek, you know? You jog to one lamppost and sprint to another, so I thought I'd sprint past them. And I just slipped off that curb and I didn't know how to do my ankle in. And I could feel it swelling up, but I thought, I can't look at it, I've got to run off, I'm so embarrassed. Which made it worse. That was pretty embarrassing. I'm sure they probably still talk about it now. What about you?
I have two that come to mind. One, a running incident. I had played a soccer match the night before, and my thing is to go running the next day, go jogging the next day. It kind of seems to help my legs a little bit, not be so sore following that. But I was tired because we played like a full 90 minutes on a normal sized pitch, and I don't normally do that. So I was out running, and I went to go kind of step up a curb, get off the street, and my shoe just caught the curb, and I stumble and then down, and I reopened a cut that I had on my leg and kind of, you know, yelled or whatever, and went to go get up, and somebody was driving by. It was a kid, couldn't have been more than 18, 19. He rolls down his window and he says, "Hey man, you okay?" And before I could even say anything, and he just goes like, "Dumbass," and drives away. And I was like, well, I can't chase you, but I want to. And me at that age, totally something I would have done to somebody. So it's full circle. I deserve it.
You had to take it on the chin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've all had that with kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the other one that's not so much injury, but pretty foolish was, what was it? About 10 years ago, me and a friend of mine, Scott Burnett, he works at the Southampton University in Southampton. We thought we'd do a marathon somewhere. We ended up doing it in Siberia. And we were pretty fit, you know, playing football back then, but I don't know if it was the jet lag or the heat. It was getting to about 30 degrees. I don't know what happened. I wasn't feeling so good in the race. And all I remember is waking up in hospital. I think I passed out after about 20 miles. And that was bad, but the worst thing was coming round. And I was on a drip and I was saying, "Oh, I'm so thirsty. And they gave me a little thimble of water. And then I vomited all over my body. So that had to strip me naked. And obviously being so dehydrated, you know, all I can say is that, you know, all I can think about is those little chipolata sausages, you know. It wasn't my finest hour, covered in vomit and urine and with an extremely flaccid penis. So that was quite embarrassing.
I remember giving you a hard time about pulling out of the race because you twisted your ankle, and you sent me the link to the article you wrote on that. And
did I? I didn't. Yes,
you did.
Yeah.
I asked that question wholeheartedly, hoping you were going to talk about that, because it was. I remember reading it and laughing, and reading it and also feeling really bad for laughing, but also just going like, "Man, this is great." And I don't know. I cheers to you for actually, taking the time to write that and really kind of tell that story the way you did, because I thought it was great. And
tell you what, Matt, it links a bit back to your you being a bit stressed out about interviewing Anthony Niemi, because sometimes that one makes the story better, doesn't it? When things go really wrong, a bit like in the spirit of Hunter Thompson, when things go really badly. That's what I always think. If things go really wrong and I interview someone and they just call me an idiot or I make a mistake, maybe that'll make it easier to write, That's the consolation you have.
I think the only other injury I've ever had that was really embarrassing was I went beer tasting at a number of places last year, actually. And I decided at one point, I thought we were pulling into the parking lot, and I was sitting in a big van, kind of a 15-passenger van. And I decided I was going to, be the first one in. And so we pulled into what I thought was a parking lot, thought we were going to stop. Opened the door, jumped out, and we were going about 15 miles an hour. And I took 2 steps and just went down. And this was towards the end of our trip, so I had been drinking quite a bit. And,
I was gonna say.
And my cousin was sitting in the front seat, and she said, "Well, I thought you had it, because the first 2 steps you went from being in the back seat to being even with me and looking at me in the window, and then you just went down." And I slid into the curb, up against the car, all this stuff. And my uncle gets out of the other van and just goes like, "What are you doing?" And just, I had put my hand out to kind of brace myself. And so I just chewed through my hand on the asphalt, and it was just a bloody mess. And we still had another place to go, and we had probably another 2 hours out. And so I'm walking around this place with all these other people who are, not nicely dressed, but nice enough dressed. And I've got a soccer jersey on, first of all, and I'm just bleeding everywhere. And
you were a hooligan. Yeah.
Yeah. And my hand, was I still, if I'm cold, you can still see where the scar is. It doesn't, it stays there.
Nothing broken.
Nothing broken, just a flesh wound, but fairly deep.
That's clear evidence. It helps, if anyone listening, it helps to always be a bit drunk.
That's right.
You won't get injured. Otherwise, you might have been terribly injured.
Yeah.
Were it not for that alcohol.
That's right. It is embarrassing, but I'm really glad it's all okay. So, you have a prediction for the World Cup, though?
Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I haven't got any. I mean, I think that's why this is such a great tournament, because everyone was talking before about, Germany. I mean, maybe they still will get to the final. They look terribly vulnerable. People are saying Brazil. They've got some good forward players, but I don't know. I think this tournament's going to be just a tournament of attrition, There might be someone who's a favourite, and then they'll get knocked out. I'm still thinking Portugal aren't a great team, but you just think maybe Ronaldo can drag them to the semis or the final.
Yeah,
maybe he can do that. I'm pretty sure the Spain-Portugal group is tied to the Russia group. So if could be Portugal-Russia second round. That'd be interesting. I've got absolutely no idea who's going to win. I think anyone who says they do is deluded, because I think it's going to be. I'm hoping the likes of Belgium and Croatia get a bit further on at sort of some. I was going to say lesser teams. That's not fair, because they've got some really good players. And I'd love it if England can get to the knockout stages, because once you get there, you just never know. You just never know what's going to happen. I'm not suggesting for a minute England are going to win, but it'd be great. It'd be great if we could get to the knockouts and just see where we go from there.
I always just want the toughest job for the commentators possible. Like, I want a Poland team, and maybe if they could have played like Lithuania, maybe, or if Lithuania had made it, or if they can come up with somebody, maybe some of one of the African nations. I just want to really, I want a mouthful for the commentators, just so I can enjoy it.
They're all pretty well prepped for that, aren't they, these days? They all do pretty well, I guess. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, Matt. I saw in the UK, Clive Tildesley's a pretty famous commentator and gets a lot of the big games, but I saw his notes for the Champions League final, and my goodness me, has he got neat handwriting? It could be a font in its own right. I've seen Adam Blackmore from Radio Solent, who does the Saints commentary. His are pretty good. And I suppose these are the things they're always referring to, aren't they? So they must do a lot of prep these days. Although some of the pundits, some of the ex-footballers, especially in the UK, they struggle a bit with a lot of the names.
Yeah,
they need it. They need it They need one of the assistants or runners to sort of give it to them phonetically to prep up, I think.
Yeah, we did a poll and preview show, and I told somebody I would do it under with one caveat, is if I couldn't get this other guy, if I couldn't get Christopher Lash to help me, I wasn't going to do it. And we spent, no joke, about 25 minutes beforehand. I had the names on a sheet, and he was looking at it, I was looking at it, and he was telling me, this is how you say it, and I was typing it out phonetically because I couldn't do it. And then, like, I don't know, like, you've started to do the podcast, and so you hear your voice on there, and you'll get to, having done this for a while, there is a certain kind of just inflection that you use when you know you're confident and you know you're saying it, and then there's one that you have where you're not sure. And that episode, being that this far into it, I shouldn't ever have that issue, but that all I can hear when I listen back to that issue when I was editing is just like, you were so unsure of everything you're saying. Every time you come to a name, you pause and there's this extra, and it was awful. So hats off to those guys for doing all of the research and the prep and that's because it doesn't just happen. You know, they don't just know these stats magically. It's all got to come.
I think commentating would be a really hard job. I've always wondered, because they have to, it's not their team they're commentating on, and they have to get excited or loud when there's a goal scoring opportunity. But if you don't do it in a genuine way, it just sounds a bit false. I'm never quite sure how they manage to do that. That's why in some ways other sports commentary like cricket is nice to listen to sometimes, because it's more of it's a bit more gentle. But I think that would be, I'm sure a lot of the football commentators, they must have, maybe fans or viewers don't know it, but there must be a lot of times they listen back and think, oh, I hated that was awful.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure they have people, executives at the TV stations listening back and showing them, and this is where you messed up and this can't happen, whatever.
Or just go on social media and they get lots of feedback.
It's, there's a guy, Stu Holden, who does Fox, and Fox has gotten a lot of criticism in the States for being, almost patronizing to the fan who's watching the World Cup here, because this is the first time they've had it in a while. ESPN's had it for a long time and they've been great. But you can kind of see they have their A team, B team, and the big games are going to Stu Holden. He's doing a great job, and he's not a commentator. He was a professional. His career ended early due to injury. He does.
I remember him. Who did he play for?
Bolton.
No. Bolton, that's it. Yeah. I remember him.
Yeah, and he's a Houston Dynamo, which is the team that I support here in the States. And so there's that, and he's fantastic. And so it's nice to see him kind of getting all this stuff. But I follow him on Instagram, and they've been doing the late kickoff, so the 7 p.m. kickoff your time, and then they're flying to another city the next day, the next morning at like 3 a.m, and then they're doing another game that evening, and it's like, your life sucks. You're away from your.
It's like being on a sort of rock band on your first tour of the US, isn't it? You're just going everywhere.
Yeah, and 40 days away from his wife and kid. 40 days,
Yeah, you could lock into some pretty bad habits.
Oh, man.
Bottle of Jack Daniel. Well, you probably wouldn't want to do that before a game, but yeah, you could definitely.
You don't want to hang out.
It's not what people think, is it? It's not what people think. Not as glamorous as you might believe.
No, I'm glad he wasn't hanging out with Maradona before the. For the game, a little pick me up, But
he definitely looked like he's a very unusual character. For me, just going off piece a bit, Maradona, for me, it's like he's had 3 or 4 different people. There was Maradona like pre-1986, had really bouffant hair and was maybe not quite. He was always quite kind of like stocky. Then there was Maradona of 1990, who got them to the World Cup, who kind of had the little earring with a little thing dangling from it. That's when he looked really cool, I think, 1990. By 94, he obviously, cocaine and various other habits had the better way. He looked kind of like, and now he's like this kind of like, he's like a crazy uncle kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Person. I guess when he was playing, he was like master of that. That's where he was most happy. He was master of his own domain. I remember at the beginning of the 1990 World Cup, when they lost to Cameroon in Milan, beginning of the game, he was doing these keepy-uppies with his shoulder. I remember thinking, how is he looks so cool,
Yeah.
Totally at ease. Whereas now he just looks a bit loopy,
No, he is definitely your drunk uncle that shows up to your Little League baseball game, and it's just both very intimidating, and because he knows so much about the game, but also just doesn't know when to say what and when just to shut up,
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You have a few minutes. We'll talk very briefly about Southampton because this has been a great conversation. I don't really want to ruin it with everything that's been going on with the team. But first off, we've gone back to the yellow away kit. How do you like that? Were you happy with the way the kits came out, or anything you wish that would have changed?
I love a yellow and blue away kit, obviously, because it's the same as the boys winning the cup in '76. And of course, I realised that most teams wore a yellow away kit up until then. It was just like, it wasn't even a kit. It was like, here's just a changed jersey, just plain yellow, just totally plain, no sponsors or logos. And Saints only wore the one they won in the cup final for the cup final. It was specially made by Admiral. So then all of a sudden that became a bit of a thing. So I'm happy. I saw on Twitter a lot of younger dudes who are unhappy because it's a red sponsor and it was a bit of a 90s-ish kit. And I suppose like anything these days, some people are going to love it, some people are going to be indifferent, some are going to hate it. I'm happy. I think it's good to have that link to some sort of identity when we actually won something. I think it's quite cool in Saints. The last kind of like 20 years, they've done quite a nice black and red kit. Like the one we had a nice one, didn't we, when we won at Anfield in the second leg of the League Cup final. That was quite a nice one.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'll be controversial. Red and white stripes is actually quite hard to do well. Stripes is hard to do well. It really is. It's it's like too many stripes, not enough stripes. There's not much you can do with stripes, So if I was going to get one, I'd probably go for the away one. But I'm never going to, when you got some poor sod in the social media team posting about the kit, I'm never going to just go back. That's a lot of crap. That's not really how I like to do things. If you want to do that, you're free to do that. But I like the yellow and blue one.
Yeah, I am a fan of that one particularly. And like you said, stripes is difficult. It's difficult to change it up, enough. And so
it is, isn't it? It is. I mean, you look at the 80s. We never really had stripes at all. We had like the one we've got just had last season. We had various versions of that. One season it was kind of like all red with white arms, and then at the back at the 80s we had one like the Denmark national team, the Hummel kit, with like tiny little pinstripes. I'll tell you what, if we're going to have any manufacturer, I've always a few years back I always wanted Saints to get a Kappa kit, but now if we can get anyone, I'd love us to have a Hummel kit again.
Okay,
that would be cool, but. What can you do with red and white stripes? Not much. Not much.
I think maybe unpopular opinion, but I like Under Armour. I always thought the Spurs Under Armour kits were really nice, and I was happy when we signed on. And maybe it's just the American company in me, and the fact that over here they are still trying to kind of become. They start off making undershirts basically, and like the underwear that you would wear underneath your jerseys and stuff like that. And when they broke into the jersey stuff, they were really bad for a long time. They made American football jerseys that were awful, always really bright and kind of harsh on your eyes. But I think they've gotten a lot better. And my mother-in-law generally buys me a kit for my birthday, and so I've been like the yellow one. She's like, "But your team's red and white." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the yellow one, the yellow one, please, please buy me the yellow one."
I think I might. I haven't bought a Saints kit for a little while. I might get the yellow one, I reckon. I mean, people, if you don't like it, no big deal. There'll be another new one next summer. That's how it works these days,
Yeah. I don't know. Do we want to talk about the team? Do we want to talk? The one thing I want to make sure we talk about, and then we can probably wrap it up, is Tadic leaving. Potentially, it seems like that he's going to go. For me, I am conflicted because he is one of my favorite players. Him and Bertrand are probably two of my favorite players. And I've stood up for Tadic, I think, for the majority of the season, even when a lot of people were upset with him. And he is frustrating. Don't get me wrong. But I think he's played here for 4 seasons. If he moves on, I think we lose a lot. But I also think maybe that this is potentially the right time to do it, with him being, going to be 30, or he is 30, and this might be the last kind of big contract he can get. This might be the most money we can get for him. And he gets to go somewhere where he wants to go. And I think he leaves basically on good terms with the fans and I think teammates and everybody else.
Yeah, it's just a circle. It's a circle of Saints, isn't it? People come and people go. It's always been the way. And like you said, he's coming up he's coming up 30. As Mick Shannon said, the old glass mountain. You can't maybe do it as much as you used to be able to. I've got some good memories of him. He scored the winner at Old Trafford when Ronald Koeman was manager. I suppose people might think I'm being a bit flippant, but some Saints fans, they might think, well, fine, he's going. He's the creative player. Who are we going to get in to replace? So, I don't know. I mean, it's always tricky getting players in World Cup year, because if anyone's playing in the World Cup, you know their price is going to skyrocket. So, I'm at that age now when I've seen a lot of players come and go. So I'm not maybe as... I wish him well, you know. They're saying he could be going to Ajax, right? So
yeah.
Hope if he does go, wish him well. Just be interesting to see who they get in. I mean, I really thought I had this very romantic notion when Gaston Ramirez came in. I thought he was going to be great. Didn't work out. I thought Boufal, I had romantic notions about him doing great. It didn't work out. A lot of rumour about him, you know, having a serious dust up behind the scenes. So I guess it's more about the sort of character you sign on. I mean, not just Saints, but all clubs. They spend a hell of a lot of time tracking players to see what they're like and how they behave. Although that said, we did buy who was the guy we bought who was a complete nutcase, sort of Argentinian Italian. God, what was his name? He scored that brilliant goal against Manchester City. Osvaldo.
Yes.
Daniel. Yeah. I mean, he that went against the grain of, we check out the players, we see what they're like and their personalities like, blah blah blah. But obviously didn't do it with him. But I think with Saints, you've got to have people who are pulling in the right direction. Someone like, I've moaned a little bit about Tadic, but it's because of the sort of player he is, a flair player. They're probably not going to track back and slide tackle. That's not how they express themselves. But he's gifted.
Yeah,
he's gifted. He's got a lovely touch. I'm sure he does a lot of crunches, doesn't he? He's got a lovely six pack.
He enjoys that.
He definitely enjoys that.
He took his shirt off a lot the end of last season, and then the lap of honor, is that what it's called, or lap of appreciation? I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I do a little lap of honor, don't I, to say goodbye. I'd take my shirt off more, I think, if mine was like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He went all the way down to his underwear, as we would call it here in the States. Maybe that was a sign. He just gave it all away. Maybe he knew he was going to ask for a move because he went all the way down. I mean, I thought he was just really enjoying his time, in front of the crowd and and all that.
I think he does. I noticed in a lot of the Saints pictures, pre-season, he likes to just take it off, tuck the shorts in tight. He's obviously a speedo guy, which is fine. Why not? But he probably knew, didn't he was going. He wouldn't wait till now. You've got to sort of get the ball rolling quite early, haven't you? I mean, God knows how these days we hear a lot of rumours as fans, but so much of it we don't know about it. I'm sure it was all been tied up for some time.
To anybody who is listening still, be sure to check out Behind the Story. It's on kind of all the major podcast apps, and the link is in the show notes. Of course, get in touch with Mark on Twitter. It's @_Mark Sanderson. And Mark, it was a pleasure again. Always a joy to chat with you. And hopefully, if I get over for a match this season, we'll be able to connect.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. You're a complete nutcase, mate, because no one would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to speak to me, not even my wife. So fair play to you.
All right. Well, my wife wouldn't get up to speak to me either, so don't worry about it.
We're in the same club, yeah.
That's right. Have a good day, man. Thank you.
Take it easy, mate.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed it. Special thanks also goes out to Mark Sanderson, author of the Bobby Stokes book, and now the man behind the Behind the Story podcast. You can find him on Twitter @_Mark Sanderson, and links to his podcast and his book are in the show notes. Go down there and check them out. We're also joined this week by Stephen Brandt from the Yellow Card Podcast. You can find them on Twitter @YellowCardPod and @StephenC. The Yellow Card Podcast is one of 50 podcasts that MLS wants you to listen to. It's not a team-specific or a league-specific podcast. There's lots of different writers. There's a wide variety of topics covered. So go ahead, check it out. You will not be disappointed. This podcast is partnered with the Southampton page. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to visit the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The artwork for the show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. For all your matchday edits, polls, competitions, and more, be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. The links are in the show notes. This show is also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram. We're at facebook.com/SFCDelivery on Facebook. So be sure to give us a follow, like the stuff, share it around. I really do appreciate it. If you're new to the show, there are links in the show notes that will help you subscribe so you do not miss future episodes. If you haven't done that yet, do so now to make sure you get each and every episode delivered to you as soon as it is ready. If you've been listening for a while, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. It really does help spread the word about the show. And if you're not on there, go ahead, share the show around anyway. That always helps too. The music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games. And the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. There's plenty more World Cup to come, so until next time, remember that together, we march on.